How do we know if an ensemble is having trouble with articulation? We might hear some side effects from poor articulation, but how do you isolate the articulations themselves and determine whether or not an ensemble is able to articulate? There are some troubleshooting steps that you can use to determine whether or not your ensemble is articulating to the best of their ability for their current level. And some of them are based upon how the bow looks, and some of them are based upon how the ensemble sounds. If you're watching the ensemble play, you can get an idea on whether or not they're able to articulate based on your observation of what the students are doing with the bow. Now, when the students are beginning a note, if you look carefully at their bows, are you seeing the bows springing? Are they changing shape at all? Okay. To articulate, you're going to have to use some kind of activating force to resonate that string, okay, to activate the string. And you should be able to see that in the change of the camber. You might even be able to see, if you're looking very closely, a change in shape in the string. So look at the bows and see if they're changing shape when they begin the notes. The other thing that you can look for in the ensemble is to make sure that the bows are not sliding. If the bows are sliding around and the bows aren't straight, there's a decent chance that they're not articulating because they haven't activated the force and they don't have the grip to keep a bowing lane. So if you see bows that are sliding all over the place, it could be bow hold, it could be some other things, but it could also be articulation. So watch for that. Along the same lines, if the students are playing fast rhythmic values like a series of 8th notes or 16th notes, are the students able to do so and keep a bowing lane? Okay, are they able to keep the position and with the bow in relation to the bridge or the fingerboard? If they're able to do that, they're likely articulating to hold that bow in place. If they're not, and they're playing 16th notes and the bow is moving up towards the fingerboard, then they're likely not creating activation force on the string. Another tip that you can use to address whether or not students are articulating visually is to see whether or not the students are playing into the string. So can you see that the students are playing into the string, or are they sliding across the string? In order to articulate, we have to have some kind of pressure going into the string in order to make that string resonate. There's also things that you can listen for that are dead giveaways to whether or not your students are articulating. First, when you're playing fast notes that are détaché, are those notes clear? Are they clearly defined? If they are, then the students are most likely articulating. If they're not, then you might need to work on articulation with them and get them to activate each note as they bow. Same thing's true with slurs and in the left hand. If the slurs don't sound clean, if they don't sound together, it might be because the students aren't articulating with the left hand. And that's one thing that a lot of people forget, is that we have to articulate with both hands, not just with the bow, but with the left hand we have to firmly press, especially with slurs, so that we define the beginning of each note to separate one note from the next. Does your ensemble sound like everything's muddy? Does it sound like we're underwater or something? Just not quite together. That could also be because of lack of articulation. If everybody's articulating, then we're either going to articulate together and play at the same time, or we're going to articulate not at the same time, and it's going to be quite obvious that we're not playing together, and that's going to force us to all play together and all play at the same time. So if everything is kind of sounding wishy-washy and fuzzy, your students are probably not articulating like they should be. When your students perform a note, are they getting immediate tone, or does it take a while for the tone to develop? Okay, I like to refer to that as the wah sound, because it just takes a little bit for the string to resonate. And this is most likely to occur in your low string sections, because they're going to have to articulate the most because they've got the biggest strings. In general, if your group has a tough time staying together, that could very well be an articulation issue as well. So you might want to take a break from whatever you're playing, get them to start articulating, get them to start playing more into the string, and see if that doesn't fix the problem rather than turning on a metronome or yelling at them or saying, watch, watch, watch. Maybe it's because they don't have a good sense of articulation, and so they don't really have the chance or the opportunity to play together. When you're doing any sort of troubleshooting, and particularly with articulation, you want to position yourself to where you can hear every student in your classroom. And this is kind of tricky because you might have to try to get to the back of the ensemble. You might have to move around this way or that way. And the way a lot of ensembles rehearse is they put their high-achieving players in the front, which makes sense because then everybody towards the back of the section can see their bows and can see what they're doing, and they can try to model for the other students, and that works very well. But it can sort of create a misperception of the way your ensemble sounds if you're always standing closest to the highest achieving students, and sometimes you need to explore the sounds in other places. So there's a couple of ways that you can achieve this if you can't get to the back of the room, like if for some reason your room's really compact and it's just not feasible for you to go back there. Well, you can have your students rotate. Maybe you have a rehearsal where your strongest players aren't sitting up in the front, just so that you have an opportunity to hear what's going on in the back. Okay, maybe you could set up some sort of recording device back there so that you can capture some of that sound. You can buy one of those portable recording devices. I think Roland makes one, the Zoom H2 or something like that. They have a whole H series. Their Tascam makes a pretty good one. You could probably even get away with using your phone if you'd like to, and that probably will do the job. You could invite another teacher into your classroom, have the band director, the choir director come in and have them stand in the back. What are you guys hearing? But make sure that you let them know before they're coming in whether or not you're looking for a pat on the back or whether you're looking for some constructive feedback that will help your ensemble improve. Along those same lines, if you can invite a clinician or a consultant or somebody to listen to your group for a rehearsal or for a day or something, and just come in and give your students some feedback on how to improve, I think that would be great. And I would think it would be even better to have them positioned somewhere that you're not, so that they can hear stuff that you can't necessarily hear. In my class, I like to use a lot of peer-to-peer coaching because it's cheap and effective, and you can get a lot of one-on-one attention with your students. For me, it works really well, and so I think for a lot of troubleshooting, and especially with articulations, you can have students watch each other and instruct them to look for those visual components, whether or not you can see the bow springing, whether or not you see students keeping a bowing lane, if the bow is sliding, or whether or not you can see the students playing into the string. You can have the students watch for one or all four of those things, and they can help each other. You can have them listen and try to hear whether or not the sound is muddy or whether it's clear, or anything in between. What can we do to make that sound more clear? Are the beginnings of the notes just as strong as the ends, or does it take a while for that tone to develop? That's a lot of things that the students can evaluate, and I really like it when they participate that way, because if they're involved in the troubleshooting process, they're more likely to fix their own technique. So in the next section, we're going to talk about some accountability measures, how to put some accountability in place to require your students to articulate, or maybe address some things that we do that remove some of that accountability so that the students never have to articulate.